Hello, everyone, and welcome to How to Read a Loom Knit Hat Pattern. This is specifically for the Roll Brim Hat. So, usually, when you download a pattern, you'll notice that there's an image included in the pattern to show you what the project's going to look like once it's finished. And then you'll notice the details about the pattern or the project as well. So for this roll brim hat, it's about 9 inches. You'll see the size yarn that was used, which is a size 4 for this particular project, which is basically your standard size for many different projects that you'll create. And then the type of yarn that was used, which is merino wool yarn, and then the size loom that was used. So I use a 36 peg loom to create this roll brim hat. And the 36 peg loom is going to be your standard size for most adults. Anything smaller than that, then you're looking at creating something for like an infant or toddler. So now before you begin any project, you always want to start with a slip knot. So that's going to be the first thing that you see in all of your instructions as far as projects go. So you may see this abbreviated as SK. So that means the same thing, that you're having to create a slip knot. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about other abbreviations that you'll see in different patterns as well. So scrolling down, once you create that slip knot, then you're getting into the actual pattern for the project. So the instructions for the pattern is going to most likely be identified underneath pattern, and that is going to help you create what is seen in the image itself. And then as you keep going, then you'll get to what's known as cast off, your instructions for casting off, or it's abbreviated CO, or you may even see it referred to as bind off or BO. So they mean the same thing. And basically, it's just helping you remove your project from the loom. So once you complete the instructions for the actual pattern, now you need to get the project off the loom. So that's where cast off instructions come in. Now going back up to the top here, I mentioned some different abbreviations that I was going to talk about later, and these can be found underneath terms. So I have some abbreviations here. Some of them I've already talked about, but as far as this project goes, whenever you see the letter K, that means knit. So for this entire project, you're only using one type of stitch, which is called the E-wrap stitch. And once you start working with that stitch and then you get 2 loops on your peg, then that's when you want to start knitting. So knitting means that you're taking the bottom loop over the top loop and you're knitting that over the peg. So that's referred to as knit. That's what that means. And you'll see that identified sometimes with the letter K. Now, WY stands for working yarn. So whenever you see WY, that means that you are using your working yarn or is referring to your working yarn. So that is the yarn that you're using from your yarn ball, or sometimes we refer to the yarn ball as a skein. Okay, so you may see those two words being interchangeable, or you may see those different verbiage in different patterns, but they mean the same thing. So either yarn ball or yarn or the skein. And then I already talked about CO, basically just means cast off, or you're removing the project from the loom. All right, now going back down to the bottom, I do like to share tips within my patterns. So I share 3 tips here about this particular pattern. I've already talked about the knit one. So this one is just letting you know that whenever you knit, that is creating your first row. So whenever you're taking that bottom loop and pulling it over the top loop and then over the peg, that is creating your first row. And the reason why I put that tip in here is because sometimes certain patterns may tell you how many rows they created to get the end result in the image. So that could be helpful sometimes. So for you, if you create a project and you've kept track of your rows and you finished that project turned out perfectly, you liked it, you want to create a second one. Now you know that, okay, I created 36 rows to finish this particular project. So if I want to make another one, I know that I need to just knit 36 rows and then I'll be done with the project. The other tip I shared here is about the peg, which I also mentioned earlier. I mean, the loom actually, which I also mentioned earlier. And that is that the 36 peg loom is standard for most teens and young adults. So if you're wanting to create projects for teens, young adults, or even maybe grown adults, then a 36 peg loom is going to be your go-to. Like I say, anything smaller, you're looking at creating something for either infants or toddlers. And then my last tip here is basically just letting you know that if you do want a wider hat, then you're going to have to use a bigger loom. So maybe the 36 might feel a little snug and you want more kind of head space, then maybe you want to use a bigger loom next time. But that is all 3 tips that I share in this particular project. And that's pretty much it for how to read this pattern. I mean, if there's anything else that you saw in the instructions that you were questioning or have questions about, just go ahead and leave a comment below and I will definitely answer those questions. Oh, and I also have a video that demonstrates the slip knot and the E-wrapped stitch. So if you do want to learn how to do the slip knot and the E-wrap stitch, you can check out my how to loom knit a hat video. Thank you for watching, and I do hope that this video was helpful.